位朋友们，大家中午好，欢迎各位呢来到今天的人物专访环节，我是主播 Peggy。那么我们知道啊，马上这个11月8号呢，中期选举就要拉开序幕了。很多朋友啊，其实在问哈，就是不知道这个中期选举到底是一个什么情况，然后呢，对于这个议员的选择啊，也是有一点困惑。那么今天呢，我们也是邀请到了一位非常重磅的嘉宾啊，就是坐在我身边的这个 Mark Meuser， 他呢是这个加州的共和党的代表人物，而且呢现在正在竞选这样的一个国会参议员的席位。那么今天呢 Peggy 邀请到他，也是想要为大家就是做一个分析或者是相关的了解，让大家知道这一位候选人呢，他的这样的一个竞选理念是什么样的。其实啊，我们说就是现在呢，接近这个选举的时候，很多的这样的一个美国的议员呢，都会希望来到我们这样的一个华人媒体和咱们的华人朋友们来交换一下意见。这个呢，也是说明我们这个华人的参政议政的水平啊，正在节节高升。所以我觉得呢，这是一个非常好的现象。那么接下来呢，我们是会用这个英文进行整场的采访。如果您要是这个英文可能听的不是太准确的话呢，也没有关系哈，我们会在节目之后呢加上这个字幕，所以呢您就是可以继续观看了。但是呢，如果您要是对于这个英语不是太熟悉，但是也不要轻易的离开咱们的节目哈，因为在我们的这个节目最后呢，我们会有一个这样的实时互动环节，大家可以把您想要问的问题发到这个评论框，然后 Peggy 呢会挑选其中的问题向这个竞选人进行提问。我觉得这个也是非常好的，让这个美国的主流的一些政客们了解到我们的想法，深入到华裔社区的一个非常好的机会。那么在这里呢，再一次感谢各位的支持、点赞和收看。好，那么接下来呢，就话不多说，让我们赶紧来认识一下今天的这一位重磅的参议员候选人。Okay, so this is the Senate candidate, Mr. Mark Meuser. So I just send a greeting to our audience. Can you please just have a self-introduction?
My name is Mark Meuser, and I'm running for United States Senate here in the state of California. This is the seat that goes to United States Senate in Washington, D.C. Each state gets 2 United States senators, and this is the seat that was vacated by Kamala Harris when she became vice president. A little bit about me is I am a constitutional attorney, which means I have studied the United States Constitution and understand our frame of government. And through my litigation, I am involved in suing government that has exceeded the authority that the Constitution gives to them. And so as a constitutional attorney, I have a record of fighting for the people against a overzealous or overburdensome government. And I am now taking that fight for people's constitutional rights to live in America, because the Constitution guarantees to us the right of self-governance, and which is a little bit different than almost every other nation where it's government down. In the United States, we're supposed to be bottom up, and that's what sets us apart from every country in the world. And so as a student of the United States Constitution, as a student of the foundations of how our government works, I have taken that into my law career, and now I want to take that to D.C.
Well, thanks for your introduction. That's very detailed, and I would say that's a very beautiful resume for me. And we all know that currently you are promoting your People's Plan. Can you please explain how this plan works, or what's your idea?
Well, anybody who wants to see my People's Plan, they can go to my website, markmeuser.com, markmeuser.com, and right there is going to be People's Plan. There are 7 elements of the People's Plan, but let's just highlight a couple of the key features of it. Again, there's 7 points of the plan, but prioritizing your pocketbook. Right now, gas prices, grocery prices are out of control. We have people who are supposed to be retiring who are going to have to work 2 to 3, 4 more years before they can actually retire. We have people who are living on fixed incomes that can't make ends meet. Right now, we are seeing that it's like 84% of working families in the United States are having to take on credit card debt in order to cover their bills. The increase in wages is not keeping up with the price of inflation. And Americans are hurting because of that. And the problem is, in D.C., when they spend more money, than they bring in tax revenue, what ends up happening is the Federal Reserve buys the difference. It's called the debt. And how they pay for that is they print more money. And when the federal government prints more money, what ends up happening is it devalues everybody's dollar.
Right.
And so that's what we are experiencing right now. Over the last several years, we have spent so much more money than we are bringing in that is causing inflation to go up. Another thing is that we have cut back on our domestic energy production. At the same time that Russia is at war with Ukraine,
right.
and now that energy is no longer available to the world, which means demand is going up while supply is going down. And so I'm running for United States Senate to prioritize our pocketbooks so that we increase energy here in the United States of America, so that way we're not dependent upon Russia. We're not dependent upon Venezuela. We're not dependent upon the Middle East. Many of those who are enemies of the United States of America, we shouldn't be dependent upon foreign countries for our own energy independence. And unfortunately, Biden has been spending down our strategic energy reserves. And because he's done that, we only have like 25 days of diesel left in the United States of America. If we don't increase production, we're going to soon have trucks that are not going to be able to drive around and deliver our food. And that means food prices are going to go even higher.
Right.
And we are hearing that the Middle East is actually, Russia's cutting back, United States cutting back, and now the Middle East has said that they're going to cut back production 2 million gallons a day.
That's a lot.
Which means gas prices, the experts are saying gas prices this December are going to go way up, which means food prices are going to go up even higher because all food is being delivered by trucks. And so we haven't seen the end of this inflation.
Right.
Unfortunately, the way how Biden has been running this country has been a complete disaster. And so we need to send people to D.C. who will stand up against Biden and say, no, we got to prioritize the pocketbook of Americans. We got to stop prioritizing special interest. We got to stop prioritizing the interest of the lobbyist. We got to put Americans first. We got to put the people who are paying the taxes, who are trying to live the American dream. We got to put their priority first. Another thing on my plan is educating our children.
Right.
Now, when COVID happened, the unelected bureaucrats here in California made a decision that they were going to shut down schools. The thing is, science had proven that children under the age of 18 were statistically not going to be harmed because of COVID. I mean, it's like 0.0000001%.
Right.
And those minority cases were people with pre-existing conditions. We could identify who they were, and we could have removed them from the school system. Instead, what the bureaucrats did is they said, we're just going to shut down the entire school system here in the state of California. Now, I filed the first lawsuit in the state of California challenging these unelected bureaucrats. And we took that, we lost initially, then we won, then we lost, and now we are appealing to the United States Supreme Court.
Good.
And just yesterday, the United States Supreme Court told the state of California, tell us why we shouldn't take this case up, which means there's some interest in this particular case. I mean, the Supreme Court gets tens of thousands of cases.
Of course.
They only hear about 100 cases a year, and that they get 10,000 cases. So most of the time, they just summarily dismiss the case. But the Supreme Court is interested in this case. They've asked the state of California to go ahead and provide a reply brief, which is going to be due here in about a month. But that is a very promising sign. I have been very active in going against unelected bureaucrats. Here in the United States, OSHA, unelected bureaucrats, said that, hey, we're going to mandate that everybody have a vaccine in order to go to work. Well, I filed the first lawsuit here in the United States. We took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and we won. When they shut down places of worship, it wasn't the legislature. It was these unelected bureaucrats. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the United States again, as I mentioned, is we the people have a right of self-governance. And we yield certain limited power to the government to govern us, but it's laws passed by the people we elect. When unelected bureaucrats are making these mandates, it actually violates the United States Constitution. And so that's what I've been always attacking these. If the legislature had said, okay, we're going to shut down schools, well, then the legislature is accountable to the people at the next election. And if the people don't like the policies, they can change the politicians. But unelected bureaucrats, they're not elected. They're not answerable to the people. We, the people, have no say. So when an unelected bureaucrat tells a restaurant owner, you can't operate your restaurant, but 10 feet away, Hollywood is shooting a film and everybody is eating right there, there's hypocrisy going on, but nobody's accountable. And so those are the type of cases that I have been taking, over 30 such lawsuits going against these unelected bureaucrats who all of a sudden thought, because of COVID, oh, I get to say whatever I want. It immediately becomes law, and everybody has to fulfill. In order for a law to be passed, you have to, in a federal law, Congress has to pass it, the U.S. Senate has to pass it, and then the president signs it.
Right.
And that's what makes a law. It's a long process. But when these, unelected bureaucrats come in and say, today, your business can't open, tomorrow, it's open, but then the next day it's partially open, and they have this ability to just say something. There's no accountability. There's no, who has the authority over those bureaucrats, and that's unconstitutional. So moving back to educating our children, I am pursuing one of these cases right now regarding the shutting down of schools in California. Not that it's going to affect kids today, but so that bureaucrats don't do this again in the future. We got to make a statement that, you know what, you were wrong. You shouldn't have done that. You never had that authority to begin with. And so that is one of those cases that we are pushing forward. Just like, even these restaurant cases. Yeah, the restaurants were allowed to open. You got to keep pushing it so that they don't do it again. They don't think that they can get away with this again.
I see.
But when it gets to education, one of the main problems that we have right now is that education is supposed to be local. We have our representatives in Congress to pass laws representing the federal government. You have representatives at the state level that represent you for state issues, your state senator, state assemblyman here in California. Then at the county, you have a county supervisor who you elect to represent you on county matters. Then you have your city council, where you get to elect a city council member to represent you on city issues. And you're supposed to elect somebody to represent you on school board issues.
Right.
Unfortunately, the Department of Education in D.C., which is full of unelected bureaucrats, have pushed down so many mandates on schools that we are no longer focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic, because all the teachers are concerned about all the other checklists that are coming at them from the federal government, from the Department of Education. And because the Department of Education says, well, if you teach this subject, you're going to get X amount of money. Now, if you teach this, you get this kind of money. And it's all these mandates. And what's done is the federal government has sent so many mandates to the school districts that, in order to fund our schools, we have to do all this. And now the school board is really handcuffed. They can no longer focus on reading, writing, arithmetic, logic, critical thinking skills, the things that were fundamental to United States education for hundreds of years.
Right.
But now what's going on is they're focusing in on all these side issues that, the parents say, wait a second, my kid needs to read and write. Our campaign, is very active across the state of California.
Right.
Millions of texts, millions of emails, and we get a lot of responses back. And it's very clear that there are, unfortunately, some people who the educational system here in the United States has left them behind. They do not have great communication skills. They do not have good grammar. They do not know how to critically think. And it's very sad that our educational system here in the United States has really deprived the future generations of the ability to live not only the United States dream,
right,
but the California dream. And, where people think that I have ability to be something that I want to be. And unfortunately, we have to get back to that, which means we have to go and start cutting the power of the federal bureaucracy over education and start transferring that power back to the school districts, because the parents and the school board and the local teachers, they should be able to have the flexibility to do what's best for their community. And we shouldn't have somebody who nobody knows who they are dictating down to our educational system.
Gotcha.
And, if you go back to that People's Plan, again, markmeuser.com, markmeuser.com. People's Plan, there's 7 points of it. One of the most interesting things that I have seen is, economy is important. Crime is important. Protecting our communities, educating our kids. But the overreach of government, we've actually been surprised at how many people, it seems to be kind of a thread through all of them, that government has overreached, and they've intermeddled themselves so much in our lives. And so, as you've heard me speak, when we talk about education, well, we got to get rid of the government overreach.
Right.
When it comes to, and it's the same thing with crime. It's the same thing with homelessness. It's the same thing, when we start looking at these problems, government, Ronald Reagan said it best, government is not the solution. Government is the problem.
Oh, no.
And the thing is that it goes back to our fundamental principle that we, the people, should have a right of self-governance. We should be able to, the government should give us the tools to enable us to step up and be the best person that we want to be.
Of course.
Unfortunately, when it comes to issues like homelessness, that's a very important issue here in California.
Yeah.
But the problem is the federal courts. Well, let me step back. First, give a little Constitution.
Yes, please.
Our United States Constitution actually gave to the states, or actually was reserved for the states, because remember that it was we the people, through the states, that initiated a federal government. It was 13 states that got together and said, we're going to create a federal government.
Right.
So the states said, federal government, here are your limited innumerable rights of what you can do. But the states reserve for themselves the ability to dictate what's called the police powers. It's called the health and welfare of the citizens. That is the duty of the states to handle. It's not something that was reserved for the federal government. And I can give you a bunch of stories. We can have a long talk here about that. But just it's important to understand that the police powers belong to the states. Within those police powers is the regulating of the issue of homelessness. Now, what happened is the federal government got involved in this problem. And it came through a case called Martin versus Boise. It was a court case that basically said you cannot enforce your law on camping or vagrancy if you do not have enough beds for the homeless to go stay in. So if your city has enough beds open that night, then you can enforce your laws that night. But if you don't have it the next night, then you can't enforce them there. And basically the federal government, through the court system, came in and made it an administrative nightmare where they're going to have to go, okay, how many public beds do we have available?
Right.
Call every single homeless shelter. How many beds do you have available tonight? Okay, now we have 100 available beds, but before we can enforce our rules, we have to now drive through the town and figure out how many homeless people. Oh, there's 105 homeless, so we can't enforce our laws today. But tomorrow, we got 110 available beds. Let's drive through the town. Oh, there appears to be 105 homeless people today. So tonight we can enforce our vagrancy laws. The court system made it absolutely impossible for cities to enforce their laws. An administrative nightmare. And what we have to do is the federal government needs to pass a very simple law. And I plan to introduce this law when I get elected.
Oh, good.
What we need to do is we need to pass a law that says if a city has a designated area where the homeless can camp, then they can enforce their vagrancy laws anywhere else in the city. So if a city within their city limits says, you know what, we got a vacant lot here, we're going to put a fence around it, and you can go set up your camp there. Now, in addition to you can enforce your laws if you have enough beds, we're going to say in addition to that, we have a designated area for you to go sleep in. So as such, we're going to remove you from sleeping on the sidewalks, the interfering with people's ability to go into stores, to go shopping, or we're going to remove your tents from in front of our schools where, 5-year-old girls are having to walk by, all this drug paraphernalia, and it's really, a safety issue and and it's not a healthy environment for our kids to grow up in. So we need to give the cities more tools to be able to enforce this, and also by able to enforce it, you're going to put the homeless in a designated area where it's easier for the city to come to them and provide services. Here in LA County, you got homeless on Venice Beach. You got homeless on the San Gabriel River, camping down at the bottom where they have to hike a mile or two down there to, go take care of them, to do welfare checks and stuff like that. So if we can provide certain areas where they can go, it makes it much easier to provide the services that the taxpayers are paying to provide service to the homeless. So that's one of the things that we could do with the homeless issue. Another thing that we could do is that almost every single military base in this country has empty barracks. And what I want to do is I want to work with the Pentagon to say that if somebody served in our military, was honorably discharged, and finds themselves in a homeless situation, then they will be able to go to a designated military base. We'll pay for them to go there if they want, and they could stay there. We'll give them some volunteer opportunities. They probably have some skills that would be helpful around the base or in the community. So they could do some volunteering to pay for that. While they're going to training, re-job training, or whatever they need, we're going to use the military that train them with their skills to begin with, give them a place to stay while they get their life back in line again. And I think that's the very basic things that we can do on the issue of homelessness. Generally speaking, I will call it's a city issue. It's something that the local government needs to deal with. The bigger the government, the more money we're going to waste. There's more levels of red tape. And we really just need to get the federal government out of it. But I do think that we need to make sure that they have the ability to do what they need to do.
I see. Well, I would say that's not only a great conversation, but also a lecture to me, for me to have a deeper understanding about how the government works, as well as the issue that we are facing.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody who's followed the court system here in United States, over about the last 30 years, there's been a move to what we've called originalism.
Right.
And what we need to do is now move our legislatures back to the first principles of the Constitution. And that's one of the things that every speech I give, I'm educating people on what the first principles of our Constitution is. Because unfortunately, our school system is not teaching people what is in the Constitution.
Right.
Why was it established the way it does? A lot of people don't understand the concept that we the people means we are the government. We created the government. We gave the government limitations, and we set up what we call dual jurisdictions. So there are some things that your federal government is supposed to do, and some things your state government is supposed to do. And so that's one of the burning passions of my life is let's get back to the foundations. What made the United States of America a great nation? Right. What made us, where millions of people want to immigrate to the United States to live that American dream? Why? Well, I mean, we could talk about California. In the 1849, we were the gold rush, and people from China, people from the western or eastern part of the United States, people from all over Europe traveled to California to not only get the American dream, but the California dream, because they wanted something better for their life. They wanted to have personal control of their destiny. Right. And some people failed, some people succeeded, but they all wanted that control. They wanted to be able to make the decision, what's best for me? And, there was a great migration of Chinese that came to California. There was, people who came from Europe, South America,
all over the world.
All over the world came to California for their American dream. And then we saw Hollywood here in California. Why did Hollywood start in California? It's because New York, the theater capital of the world, had so many burdensome regulations, government regulations, that Hollywood said, we need to go somewhere where we are free to innovate, where we are free to push the envelope and try new things and not be worried about somebody's copyright or some government regulation. And so California not only gave you the American dream, it gave you the California dream. And that's why Walt Disney and all these studios came to Hollywood and established themselves. And that created a second gold rush. Then we saw in the 1930s the big Dust Bowl in the Midwest, and farmers were absolutely broken. And they came to California, to the Central Valley, and they basically dug irrigation ditches and made the Central Valley the breadbasket of the world. They wanted to live their American dream. They wanted to live the California dream. Then we move forward to World War II and the dawn of the aviation age and rockets and everything like that. And that whole industry came to Southern California, to the ability to innovate, to have the American dream, the California dream, and move forward in a few more years. Silicon Valley, the age of technology. And for over 100 years, California was a place where you wanted to go for the best education, where you wanted to go where the best business environment. Unfortunately, for about the last 40 years, what we have seen is as the California government grew, there were more unelected bureaucrats who wanted to prove that their job was worthwhile, and the regulations kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point where we now see California exporting more jobs than people coming to California. Right. They would rather go to Georgia. I mean, Georgia has set up almost Hollywood too, because Georgia is one of the more films are shot in Georgia than almost anywhere else other than California. But they've siphoned off large portions of the movie studio business. Lots of companies have gone to Tennessee, Florida, Texas. People don't want the government telling them what to do. I mean, just think back when you were 3 years old and your mom told you, oh, you got to go to bed now. I mean, you wanted to be independent. You wanted to say when you went to bed. Right. You had your favorite foods to eat, and sometimes your mom made you eat stuff that you probably didn't want to eat. Right. We as individuals desire that ability to govern ourselves. And, when you were 3 years old, you needed your parents to guide you. But the older you get, the more mature you get. We need to have less government, not more government. And so our government, the United States of America, set up a government that's different than almost any nation in the world. There are certain fundamental principles. The Constitution is to protect our rights. To give you an example, the American Revolution. Shortly thereafter, you had the French Revolution. Now, in the French Revolution, they called it a republic also. Right. We were a republic, they were a republic. But in their republic, they didn't have a constitution that was protecting your life or your property. So if the mob all of a sudden decided off with your head, King Louis lost his head with no trial. Right. His wife lost her head with no trial. It's just the mob said off with your head, it was off with your head. Lafayette, one of George Washington's closest allies during the Revolutionary War, he lost most of his property because the mob said, we like your house. We're taking your house for our own purposes. In the United States of America, our Constitution ensures that the government does not take your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness without due process of law. And that's why I'm circling all the way back to where we started, where I'm a constitutional attorney, fighting against the bureaucrats who have deprived people of life, liberty, and property without due process of law.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I like how you mentioned about we the people, and that's definitely very important to our, not only the nation, but also like the governor or the government and the whole country. I mean, I myself, I prepare a lot of questions, but it seems like there are many audience, they are eager to talk to you as well.
Well, let's answer their questions.
Sure, so let's now move to our Q&A session. Ooh, that's a lot. So many people are like thank you for your sharing. Let's see. Someone are asking how you deal with the homeless issue, which I think you've talked earlier, and I think that's very comprehensive. If you wanna elaborate more, you can just say it now. But
I think that question probably came before we got into that segment.
Right.
I think we did kind of cover that one there. So. If not, they can always reach out to our campaign, and I can try to answer it a little bit further.
Sure.
And you can reach out to our campaign by going to my website, markmeuser.com, markmeuser.com.
I will send a link after we finish the conversation so that you can visit the link directly through our comments. Well, there's someone is it's a parent. She was asking how you feel about the educational, or like how you feel about education in California as well, which I think maybe you've covered before.
Well, I can address that a little bit more.
Okay, sure.
Again, I'm running for United States Senate, which means I'm supposed to go to D.C. to represent the federal side. Every state is supposed to have, every locality is supposed to be in charge of their education. Now, the problem is on the federal level, we have sent so many mandates that we are interfering with the state's ability to properly educate the kid. The state of California has also created a bunch of hurdles that parents don't always like. Now, as a federal representative, I really will not have much say on what the state does. I can only deal with what the federal government is doing. And as to what the federal government is doing, I think the federal government has put way too many mandates on the local school districts, and I'm going to fight to reduce those mandates so that California, your local school district, will have more ability to innovate and focus in on the topics that the kids need in order to succeed in California.
Well, thank you. Someone is asking about the drug. They are fear about having the drug legally in the California state.
A particular drug or any, or
like drugs in general, I think.
Well, I know that right now there's a lot of talk about fentanyl, and that's streaming across our southern border.
Right.
And that's why it is important to actually enforce our border so that criminals, the drug cartel, are not able to bring drugs into the United States of America to kill our kids, to kill our young adults. This is actually, hundreds of people are dying every day because of fentanyl, and the current administration is not enforcing the laws that are already on the books. It's not the administration's job to say, I don't like this law, so I'm not going to enforce it. No, it's up to Congress to pass laws. Congress has passed laws regarding immigration, and if the federal government refuses to enforce those laws, Congress has to do something. So we're going to go in there and start enforcing those laws, because we cannot allow the criminal cartel to come in and attack our children with these dangerous, deadly drugs. We got to stop this trade at the southern border.
Right. Well, thanks for explanation. And I think someone is echoing with the situation you're mentioning about, like you mentioned about California. He lives in California, and he was wondering, if you were elected, what is the first thing you are gonna do?
Well, there's so many things that we need to do in D.C. I mean, the last couple of years has just shown that we have so many problems in D.C. it's hard to say what the first one is going to be because there's 100 senators I have to work with to prioritize, and some of them have been there for a long time and they have priority. But my main focus is going to be reining in this unelected bureaucracy. We need to balance our budget. We need to come in and get the Department of Education out of our local school districts. We need to get the CDC out of the landlord business. They made so many regulations telling landlords what they can do and can't do. We need to come in and start reining back the government overreach that we have been seeing, whether it's from reducing their budgets, whether it's reducing their responsibilities. There's going to need to be a lot of cleaning house that needs to go on here. But I wish I knew what the first thing I was going to do. I'm going to have a whole litany of bills that we're going to be introducing by January. Which ones go through fastest, I cannot tell you.
Okay, cool. We are very looking forward to hearing that. So yeah, let's see. Some people are talking about the Asian hate. They're saying like the Asian hate in California is kind of severe, and there are many. She herself has some like situation like seeing the cars was being trashed or being dragged away. She was wondering if you have any idea on that issue or.
I'm a student of history, and I've read a lot of history. I saw how United States of America in the 1850s and 60s mistreated the Chinese community, making them, they weren't slaves, but they, 30 of them living in the same room, doing dangerous jobs, blowing out the Ks for the Union Pacific Railroad, where they were not being paid anywhere near what the, white people were being paid. We've seen racism with the Hispanic community. Go back to the 1800s, the Irish community, as they came over to the United States of America. The problem is people fear when somebody is different than them and they are concerned, how's this going to hurt my livelihood? How's this going to hurt my ability to make a living? And unfortunately, it's human nature. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. There is a natural human nature of things. I'm not saying it's right, but there is just this natural thing. When somebody is different from me and you see them succeeding, there's a jealousy that happens saying, oh, they're going to take the job that I should have. And it's sad, and I'm not excusing it. No one should feel like they are a second-class citizen. The Asian community has come here to California especially, and they have done a great job of making sure that their kids get the best education possible.
Right.
They have, the academies that happen on the weekends and, after school, and they make sure that, it's not just the 6 hours that they're in the school. They make sure that their kids get the education that they can, the best education that they can, and now they go and get scholarships because they are better prepared and the schools want them. And too many people, unfortunately, just say they expect a handout. They don't want to exceed. And the Asian community has done a really good job. They've come here, made families, they've made a life for themselves, and they keep pushing themselves because they understand the American dream, because they've lived where they didn't have the American dream, and they want that opportunity. And too many Americans, they just want, it's like they've grown comfortable. And so the solution, I don't know if there's a magic solution of, there's a golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself. You treat others as you want them to, as you want to be treated. And that's how I personally live my life. I don't care if you are Hispanic. I don't care if you are Black. I don't care if you're from Asia. I don't care. I want you to experience the American dream. I want you to be the best you that you can be. Because if we all succeed, we're all going to get better.
I like that. That's a very great conclusion about this, I would say, for this question. And we saw many, like our new and old friends. Tian, he is one of our longest audience, and he said he's gonna vote for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
And some audience are echoing him as well. Let's see. Someone was asking if you can comment on the affirmative action.
I think affirmative action actually hurts, especially, affirmative action in education. Unfortunately, we see here in California where people want to say, well, okay, the Asian population is 15%, and so we only want 15% of our education scholarships to go to Asians. That does not produce the American dream, because the American dream is, we give the tools to everybody, and it's up to everybody to be the best them that they can be. And that, affirmative action saying, okay, we're only going to take 100 students, but because, but rather than take the top 100 students who prepared themselves for this opportunity, we're going to only give, only the top 15%. 15 slots go to Asians, and now all of a sudden you're letting somebody in based upon color, not based upon their academics. It actually hurts things, because what we need to do is say, hey, this opportunity is available for everybody.
Right.
You understand it. This is what you want to do. I mean, a great example is, Ted Cruz, senator from Texas. He had a dream that he wanted to be a clerk at the United States Supreme Court. So he worked backwards. Okay, I need to go to Harvard Law School. I need to be on the editorial board. And, from a high school student, he planned how he was going to go through college, what schools he was going to go to. And because he had a dream, because he had a vision, he actually worked his way up to where he was he was a United States Supreme Court clerk, and was then able to leverage that into a position in government where he ran for the United States presidency. We need to understand that the federal government it needs to give equal opportunity for all, but we cannot expect equal results from all. And unfortunately, the affirmative action is all about equal opportunity or equal outcomes. And the American dream is equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity and equal outcome. That's different.
They're two different things. We could give a silly little analogy. This table is set right here.
Right.
That is a set table. If everybody had the ability to sit at this table, great. But if I am 6'8", which I'm not, and you were 4'11", and you are not,
I am not. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to put, equal opportunity. We all need the opportunity to experience the American dream.
Right.
Which means that we can't say, okay, because you live in a rich neighborhood, your school district gets $10 billion. But because you live in a poor neighborhood, your school district only gets $1,000. That is disparagement treatment. But the flip is not true. Oh, you're in a rich neighborhood, you only get $1,000. You're in a poor neighborhood, you get the $10 billion. It needs to be an equal opportunity for all, and then everybody has the opportunity to push their American dream.
Wow, beautiful. And I think someone was like saying backwards about that. Like, she was saying no Black Lives Matter. That's all lives matter. What's your opinion?
As soon as we get into affirmative action that one race is better than another race, or one race deserves compensation for something that happened 100 years ago.
Right.
The thing is, history is history. You must study it. You must learn from it.
Right.
Because if you don't study it and you don't learn from it, you're going to have problems. So when they're tearing down statues, now all of a sudden when you're walking through that park as a 6-year-old, who's that? Well, let me tell you about this person. And, he made some mistakes. We shouldn't do that. When you tear down those monuments of what happened in our history and you try to rewrite history, it actually prevents you from learning from the past and becoming a better becoming a better nation. We are a better nation today than we were 100 years ago.
Of course, yeah.
Because we've learned, to stop slavery. We're no longer that. But if you keep living in the past, unfortunately, you're not going to be the best you that you can be. And so all lives matter. Asian lives matter. Black lives matter. Hispanic lives matter.
Right.
Every human being is precious. And here in America, we want you to have the opportunity to live that American dream where the government gets out of your way and allows you to live your dream.
Beautiful saying. I think in China we have the same same meaning. Like we are saying the history is like a mirror that you can learn from the past and also guide you into the future.
Yeah.
So definitely. Someone was asking, how do you think of Trump running for 2024?
Right now, I'm focused on 2022.
Okay.
I got to get through this election, and I'm very active politically. There are a lot of candidates who have expressed an interest in running for 2024, and my job right now is to focus in on the problems that Californians faced today. We have a problem with inflation. We have a problem with crime. We have a problem with education. I am running to focus on those issues. What we do in 2024, those questions are going to start being asked in 2023. Right now, let's focus in on what we can do by electing people who are actually going to take care of the problems that actually affect the people of California, affect the people of the United States of America.
Thank you. I think most of people are asking about the gas price and the inflation. Do you think the stimulate check has something to do with it?
The printing of money to give checks to people has an impact on it. It was kind of the start of the process. But then when Biden got in, he did the third stimulus check. Then he did the infrastructure bill, and then he did the inflation bill, which did not stop inflation. It just was more government spending. It was more special interest spending. And so what you've seen over the last 2 years is a major ramp up of spending, and that has what's caused the inflation. We were already seeing maybe a slight bump of inflation due to 2 years of reduced income because of COVID and because of the stimulus checks going out. But it wasn't the stimulus checks itself, because those were actually such a small portion of it.
Right.
It was the massive. I mean, it's like, okay, we're going to give the people this much money right here, but we're going to give big business this money. We're going to give the stock exchange this money. We're going to give the lobbyists this money. We're going to do this, and this. We gave so much money to all these special interests and gave a little bit of money to the people. But the little amount we were giving to the people is what we were talking about. But we drove up the inflation with all this spending right here. So, yes, inflation is a small part of it.
Right.
It was all the special interest spending that really created the inflation. So the politicians, I need voters to vote for me.
Right.
So I'm going to give you $600. But I'm going to go give big business tens of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. Looking at some of the government spending, it's like, I'm going to give this lobbyist group this $1 million contract to study why women aren't truck drivers. Special interest. It doesn't help the American people.
Right.
But we're going to go blame, we gave the people $600 back.
I see. Just like the iceberg. We just see a top of it.
It makes great talking points for politicians, but this big portion right here, that's where the problem is. We got to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse of federal spending.
I see. Yeah. Right. I think before the interview gets started, we're talking about some propositions, even though it's not in your hands.
Yeah.
But someone is still saying, I hope the Prop 47 can be canceled.
Yeah, Prop 47 is going to be a state issue. Again, I'm running for federal, so it means I deal with the federal issues. Prop 47 is a state issue, which means we need to deal with that on a state level. And yes, crime is out of control. We do need maybe a couple of businesses that would like to stay in California to fund it would probably be about a $10, $20 million campaign. We need some businesses to step up and say, you know what, I'm going to fund a proposition to undo the damage that was done because of Prop 47. That needs to happen, but it's not something that I'm going to be able to do going to D.C. It's something that we have to do at the local level.
Yeah, at the local level, for sure. I was seeing some... Well, thanks again for everyone who has commenting on this conversation. Let me just choose several more. People are saying, yeah, still like the crime issues, saying the cops are like very late when something happened. For example, like something happened for like policy.
Yeah.
And how can we like protect ourselves? Especially in California.
That's the $20 million question. I mean, the nice thing is that our federal constitution gives the Second Amendment the right to bear arms, and that shall not be infringed. And unfortunately, when a crime happens in your neighborhood, the police may be 10 minutes away, and you need to make sure that you are educated. We have this right to own firearms, to protect our property, to protect our lives, to protect our loved ones. And so I would encourage everybody to go down to a gun shop, purchase a weapon, go to a gun range and be trained on how to properly use that weapon. And if we do that, then if almost every week I hear a story about somebody breaking into a house, a single mother with 2 kids, and she was properly trained. She was able to defend her property, able to defend her home. The Second Amendment gives us that right. We cannot just say, oh, well, the police are going to take care of it. Well, with budget cuts that are going on right now, the police are being stretched so thin, they cannot respond to everything in a timely manner. And so as such, the Constitution gives you the right to protect yourself. And I would encourage everybody to take the time, go ahead. A gun is not the most expensive thing. Your big screen TV may be more expensive than a gun. Taking a few lessons, will go a long ways to just making sure that if somebody decides to break in to your home, you are prepared to protect your life, your family's life.
Get a gun. I see. Okay. Yeah, we are still seeing many questions popping up, but because of the time, we will just have one last questions for Mark for this time. So if you have any more questions or you want to talk to Mark, we can just go to his website, right?
Yeah, markmeuser.com. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I do got to admit, I get probably 500,000 conversations going every month, so I do not always get a chance to respond, but we do have a conversation going on over there.
Sounds good. Okay, so last one. Someone was asking, the news are saying like people or like the companies are fleeing. So does it mean that California is no longer attractive? How do we see those kind of issue?
Well, again, I'm running for the federal government, so it's my job to make sure that the federal government is not getting in your life. There are so many people who have opinion about what's going on in California, but we live in a free society, which means if you do not like what the regulations being put on you by one state, you simply pick up and move. And enterprise is always going to try to find the place where they can thrive the best. And California, as I was talking earlier, there has been such an oppression over the last 40 years of restricting business that we've gone from being one of the best business environments in California to one of the worst. And as such, businesses are going to move where they have the ability to thrive. As a federal government, as a federal United States Senator, it's my job to make sure that people can move from one state to another without the best way possible. I'm not going to get involved in whether Florida is the best state to do your business in or California. That's up for the state governors to be involved in that competition. Competition for people, for best schools, for best teachers, for the best way of life. And if all states are fighting to be the best them, then, we're going to have a pretty good America to live in.
Well, great. Thanks for sharing. Thanks again for joining us. But before we end this conversation, do you have one last sentence or anything you want to tell our audience?
Thank
you.
Please
do. Mm-hmm.
Election day is November 8th. If you're tired of high gas and grocery prices, you can do something about it. You can vote. We are seeing right now one of the lowest voter turnouts here in California. We've been voting for over 3 weeks, and voter turnout is very, very low. So what I'm asking everybody to do, if you are a registered voter, make sure that you vote in these next couple days. November 8th is going to be here before you know it. Vote. It is your duty as an American. It is your responsibility as an American. It is your privilege as an American to vote and to select your representatives. And when you do not take the time to select your representatives, what that means is special interests, people who have interests that are not necessarily yours, they get involved with their money. And they are going to push the candidates that will push their agenda, not your agenda. And so my request for everyone who's watching this, make a plan to vote and vote. But that's not enough. Call 3 friends or text 3 friends and say, you know what? I'm tired of gas and grocery prices. I've decided that I'm going to do something about it. I have made a plan to vote. Will you join me? And when they say yes, they'll join you. Then you say, hey, by the way, I heard this guy named Mark Meuser run for U.S. Senate. Vote for him.
Sounds good. I think I will text 10 friends.
10 friends. You're a patriot.
I am. Well, thanks again for joining us. And I can tell you people are very excited to have you here. And thanks for letting us know about your campaign and everything. That was a very great conversation.
I'm glad to do it. Thank you for all those who took the time to educate themselves and be a better American. November 8th will be here before you know it. Vote.
That's next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Okay. Well, thanks again for watching this conversation, and we are looking forward to seeing you next time.